All right, so this week we are looking at chapter 23, which discusses empire, industry, and everyday life, 1870 to 1890. So again, just like chapter 22, short time span, we're only talking about 20 years here, 2 decades, which is nice for us, right? Small chunks. So for this one, you also have 4 learning objectives. And the first is to understand the causes and effects of the new imperialism of the late 19th century. So what is new imperialism? Imperialism, was there an old one? So yes, it is a period of rapid and aggressive expansion by European powers. Also to mention, not just Europe, but the United States. We have our own imperialism that we'll touch briefly on, and Japan. But Europe, at this time, we're going to look at expanding into Africa, Asia, and also into the Pacific. Unlike earlier or old imperialism, which was often coastal and trade focused, this new imperialism, it's characterized by direct political control, resource extraction, and cultural domination over vast inland territories. So for those of you who are familiar with like U.S. colonization, right? Like England colonizes the United States. Where were the 13 colonies originally located? Along the eastern coast, right? If you think about when Spain colonized the Americas, they started coastal and then they did go more inland. France as well, all pretty much coastal and along waterways. So this is different, right? So that's why I chose this map of Africa to show you this rapid imperialism of Africa, and everybody wants a chunk of Africa. Why Africa? Because she's a very rich country. Riches in her minerals and her other natural resources that she has. So that's why there's this scramble for Africa that you're going to notice. You are also going to distinguish between the different forms of industrial development taking place in Western countries during this period. So between this time frame, we've start to see industrial development in Western countries entering a new phase, and sometimes it's referred to as the second industrial revolution. Remember, industrialization began and the Industrial Revolution began in Britain, but this period marked both a broadening and also a deepening of industrial growth with distinct forms and focuses across Western Europe and North America. So you want to be able to distinguish those different forms of development that are taking place during this time period. You also should be able to analyze the effects of industry and imperialism on the Western culture. So, profoundly reshaping Western culture during this time period, both industry and imperialism. So we see this reshaping of Western culture when it comes to like the values, institutions, arts, and social norms. Rapid industrialization, aggressive imperial expansion. What does that mean? What effects does all of that have on Western culture? So think about belief in progress in science is one of those effects. Urbanization in the modern city. We're going to talk about migration and mass migration that's happening all over the world. People are leaving, people are just moving from one side of the country to the other, people are going across oceans. There's tons of migration happening in this very rapid city growth. Working class and middle class culture, it's going to affect that also. You're even going to see artistic and intellectual responses. You're also going to see racial superiority. We've heard about this for several centuries at this point, but this racial superiority and civilizing mission, that is what is happening in Africa. Why Europeans and even to some degree Americans thought that Africa was not civilized, I don't know, because that's where civilization comes from. But we will figure out why that is happening, this racial superiority that is connected with that. And finally, you should be able to describe the rise of mass politics during this period and its impact on the governance of European countries. So we see a rise in mass politics. What is mass politics? What does that mean? That means increasing involvement of the general population. So, example, in the U.S., during the era of Andrew Jackson, when he was president of the United States, we saw political participation opened up to more white men than we had before. We're still excluding the black vote. We're still excluding the female vote. but more people participated in politics during that time period. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening around the world. You've got expanded suffrage, suffrage means vote, expanded vote, mass political parties, right? Popular press and political campaigns, and organized labor movements, which we hadn't seen those things before across the Western part of the world, or what we define as the West, so Europe and the Americas. So that's kind of cool that that's happening, and a lot of it is because of these mass migrations that are happening also. Kind of cool stuff is happening in the chapter. So assignments for chapter 23, learning curve, your chapter quiz as always. Environment matters. I want you to look at the violence of colonization. Terms of history, this new term that we're going to be learning about called home rule. And then, of course, the map quiz for chapter 23. And as always, I added the crash course videos for you. So this first one is about imperialism and just kind of the backlash for that. So expanding and growing empires, but also the reaction to those peoples that are being taken over at this time. And then the second video, the last one, is about migration, which is discussed a lot in this chapter. Map quiz for chapter 23, you're looking at migration all over the world. So I thought that this video would help you understand migration, but then also realize how important it is to this time period that we're talking about.